Number two, we need to verify the status of every single worker in America. President Bush talks about a secure identity card. It is just a stall. There is no such thing as a secure card. Any 8th grader with a Macintosh computer can forge anything nowadays. What we need is a secure checking system. The basic pilot program, while not perfect, is a good start. Right after 9/11, in fact, the month after, when I was in Washington, D.C., I went to AMVA, the American Motor Vehicle Administrators, and they were interested in, at that time, they were interested in document security. And I said, well, what identifiers do you use on the documents? Well, name, date of birth, Social Security. I said, well, that's not good enough. You need to use a 4th identifier. Presumably, I could steal your wallet or find your purse, and I would have those 3 things, name, date of birth, and Social Security number. The 4th identifier should be place of birth. That's going to be much harder to find out. You run everybody that's being employed right now through the government database to verify that they are who they say they are. Is it going to eliminate all the fraud that goes on? No. But will it eliminate the wholesale fraud? Yes. Will it be a deterrent? Yes. Now, if you're an employer and you have 4 employees or 400,000 employees, once you've checked them all, you don't ever have to check them again ever, do you? They've been checked. They could work for you for 20 years and you've verified that they are who they say they are, that they're an American worker. And by that I mean either an American citizen or a legal immigrant with a work visa, okay? Now, then after that, the only people you have to check are the applicants that come in to apply. And you run them through the basic pilot program or a newer, better system, hopefully, that we could put together easily. I mean, let's face it, computers are worth nothing if they can't do this job for us, right? Then we can send the message around the world, we're securing the border, so don't come. Also, don't waste your time and spend your money and risk your life coming, because if you do make it past the border, there's no job for you here. We're checking everybody. The object is deterrence, to lower expectations, to keep people from coming. The third thing we need is real interior enforcement, which we have virtually none of now. The recent arrests that you've heard, the so-called raids that you've heard about, this isn't the broad level enforcement operations that our opponents would like to have you make it out to be. It's going after the absconders in the country, the people that are so bad that they've been ordered deported and they fail to report for their deportation hearing. Think about this for a second. In America, we can't seem to get rid of anybody or keep anybody out, but we've ordered 400,000. Now the number has now grown to 600,000. We've ordered 600,000 people to leave the country. Could this just possibly be the worst of the worst? In fact, it is the worst of the worst. It's the violent offenders, it's the drug traffickers, it's the sexual predators. These are the people that the ICE has been chasing here recently, that you've heard all of this whining about in the media about how unfair it is that these people are arrested. Now, interior enforcement, right now, most of the interior enforcement assets are taken up tracking down suspected terrorist cells in the United States. And that's important work and it needs to continue. But we are never going to have enough federal officers to enforce federal immigration law. That's why we need to get local government involved. We need to get the states, the counties, and the cities involved. They can do it. They've always been able to do it. If there was any doubt, the 1996 OIRA that was passed and signed into law by Bill Clinton allows them to do it. If there's any doubt about that, there's two 10th Circuit Court of Appeals decisions that says, yes, local police can enforce immigration law. I've talked to police executives all over the country, and they say, well, how do I start? What do I do? We've got this problem, and I say, look, first of all, forget about the day laborers. I know you don't have all the money and all the officers you'd like to have. I don't want the day laborers here if they're illegals, but let's forget about them for now. Go after the worst of the worst. Go after these violent offenders, these drug traffickers, these sexual predators in this community. That is good police work, and nobody's going to complain. If you're taking a violent offender out of your little illegal alien community in your bigger city, you're also taking that violent offender off the streets of your city. And this is where the law enforcement agents start to shine. We're starting to see in the National Sheriff's Association a lot of sheriffs who've decided that this is what we're going to do. Starts with Joe Arpaio in Maricopa County, but I've talked to a lot of them throughout the country, and that is what they're going to start to do. Now, I want to talk about this myth that the immigrant communities won't cooperate with police if the police are out enforcing the law. This is just another scare tactic that's used to try to keep law enforcement executives from enforcing the law. I was down in Houston a few years ago, and I had a meeting, and at the end of the meeting, a lot of the Houston police officers that were there in civilian clothes, we had our own little closed meeting. So I pulled up a map of Houston, and I said, tell me about immigrant crime in Houston. Tell me about a legal immigrant group that has a lot of crime, Vietnamese. And I said, okay, well, I live in the Bay Area. I said, is it Is the Vietnamese crime here like it is in the San Jose area, where almost all of it is Vietnamese on Vietnamese perpetrators? They said, yes, that's exactly what it is. I said, now, when you do get word of these crimes in the Vietnamese community and you go in to investigate, do you get any cooperation from the Vietnamese community? None. Now, the Vietnamese community are legal, they're legally here. They have nothing to fear from the local police enforcing their immigration laws, and yet they will not cooperate with the police. And that is found to be true for every single group. I was watching America's Most Wanted one night. There were 3 stories. It was like a movie moment, back to back to back. A Cambodian immigrant who worked as a guard for an armored car vehicle, shot a suspect, stole the money. They went into the Cambodian community where he lived. Nobody would cooperate. They were all here legally. The next story was about a Vietnamese guy that they were chasing. The Vietnamese community, all here legally. They wouldn't cooperate. Okay. The third one was about actually an American citizen, a black woman who murdered a white man who bought the house next to her. And when they went into the black community, they got no cooperation out of the black community. The object of getting, the possibility of getting police cooperation from these communities is to build trust within the communities, which means you remove the bad guys from the communities. Even the illegal, I don't mean to say even, the illegal alien communities, while they're here illegally, they're not all stupid and they're not all criminals. The parents that are illegal aliens do not want their kids around child molesters and violent felons and anything. And if the police go in, and we saw this in San Rafael, if they go in and they pull out the bad apples in the community, they'll get cooperation from the other people in the community because they don't want to be around these people either. So this is just another myth that you're going to lose cooperation. There is no cooperation now. And why? Because most of these people, they do not understand that our police are nowhere near as brutal and corrupt as the police they left behind in their nation of origin. That's where the fear comes from. Okay, do I want to take questions now, or okay? Okay, all right. Then just to finish up, the assertion that we need the labor. I don't see any proof that we need the labor. Labor is a commodity like everything else. As a commodity, it has a price tag, and that price tag is called wages. If we indeed had a labor shortage in this country, wages would be going up. In what industry are wages going up? I'm unaware of any industry in which wages are going up, which would indicate a shortage of labor. Business saying they have a labor shortage doesn't do it. I was trained as a salesman. I was a stockbroker. I owned a small retail company. I trained salesmen, and I told them, look, salesmen's assertions aren't truth. You better be telling the truth out there as a salesman if you work for me. But don't expect the customer to believe, because salesmen saying it doesn't make it true. You need to prove it with a third-party endorsement, somebody that's used the product. Businesses saying they need this labor doesn't do it for me. I want to see the proof. And right now, there's no requirement that they show any proof at all. Until I see wages going up, which would indicate a shortage of labor but a demand for the dwindling labor pool, until I see wages going up, I'm not believing that there's any shortage of labor. The last thing I'll say is what the president is proposing is amnesty. He claims it is an amnesty. Believe me, it is an amnesty, and it would send a worse message than the 1986 amnesty sent. It would say, for sure now, America can't get rid of you. Anybody that's in our country here, if Marcus stole my lawnmower out of my garage, okay, and then a couple of days later he was filled with remorse and he brought it back and he said, look, I stole your lawnmower and I'm sorry, here's your lawnmower back, and I told him, okay, I'm not going to call the police. That would be an amnesty. If I let him keep the lawnmower, that would be an amnesty and a reward. What President Bush is proposing is not only to give them an amnesty, in other words, not making them leave, but letting them keep what it is they came here for in the first place, which was to stay. That is what the president is doing. And I don't care if they can talk about fines. It doesn't convince me one bit. Now, I think during the question thing, somebody asked me, how do we get rid of 30 million people? And we'll talk about that in the question period. Okay.